Number 1. Cave Dweller Mystery. I guess you can say my story acts sort of like a warning. It's a precaution of why you shouldn't enter abandoned locations, even when it seems it's been empty for years. I learned the hard way, and I hope this scary tale will teach you something. Let's begin. This was in the Alabama wilderness / the Appalachians, and my buddy John and I were backpacking for a couple of days. We were pretty much in the middle of nowhere, away from any civilization. Now, we loved camping, and this trip was just like all the other ones we had taken. On the third day, we were looking to ascend this mountainside that we had read about in a traveler's catalog. It took about half a day, but the incredible view it had to offer was something truly unforgettable. The thing is, this wasn't the only incredible view we witnessed. I use incredible in air quotations, and you're going to understand why. So, we were about halfway through our climbing journey when we were able to see this lonely cave. We thought it was pretty neat, and we decided to take a break. Good thing we did, because it's almost as if nature was messing with John and I. Literally 3 minutes after we had placed our backpacks on the ground and we sat, the sky opened up as the rain started to pour everywhere. Well, great. Looks like it was now a waiting game. Anyways, while we sat there talking, we started to grow curious about the cave we were taking cover in. At first, it looked pretty small, but as you walked further in, it opened up and it headed deeper and deeper into the mountainside. John and I were curious to explore it, which is what we began doing, which turned out to be a big mistake. And no, it wasn't because we would encounter a wild animal. About 3 minutes of traversing through this rocky labyrinth, we started to hear something echoing further up ahead. It sounded like singing, but the closer we got, the more it sounded like chanting. It spooked John and I a bit, but we pressed on trying to find the answer to this strange mystery. Before we knew it, we were able to see a bunch of lights slowly growing larger as we got closer. The chanting was getting louder, and a minute or so later, we take cover behind some large rocks as we find our answer. There were a group of 7 individuals dressed up in these really weird robes. They sat around a bunch of lanterns, chanting and talking about various gruesome acts. It was very eerie, but so were the strange drawings and symbols that we saw painted all over the cavern walls. John and I whisper as we begin wondering what these people were doing out here. But then we see it. In the corner was what looked to be like a skeleton, remains if you will. We got the chills, and it seemed as if Lady Luck wasn't on my side. I try to hold it back, as in that moment, I sneeze. Ah hell, here we go. They stop talking, and what looks to be like the leader grabs a hunting rifle from next to him, stands up, and then says,
"It seems we have a couple of visitors."
John and I waste no time trying to find out who these people were. We run as we hear the echoing of the rifle fire throughout the cave. Thankfully, we had left our backpacks at the entrance, because I truly believe that if we had them on our person, they would have weighed us down, thus making our quick escape that much more difficult. The entrance was now within our sight, and in one quick motion, we grab our backpacks, we run out, and we ignore the rain. We must have run for what seemed like an eternity, but we never dared look back. That was pretty much it. We decided it was better to leave, and we make the 3-day trip back to our car in 2. To this day, we have no clue who those people were and what they would have planned had they caught up to John and I. Number 2. Backpacking in the Yukon. This was sometime in the late 1990s, way before carrying a cell phone was commonplace. All you really had were your wits and anything you might bring along to protect yourself, which in this case had been a hunting knife. Anyways, I was on a solo backpacking trip in the Canadian wilderness, specifically the Great Yukon. It was one late evening, and I was looking for a spot to set up my camp. I tried camping near a lake, but I wasn't a big fan of it to begin with. I guess paranoia was telling me to stay away from any open areas since I encountered some pretty strange people along my backpacking trip, but that's not really important. I ended up finding what appeared to be like a man-made hut of sorts. It was more like this set of walls, with a roof on top, and what appeared like a patch of hay. Not thinking much of it, I approached this man-made hut, excited to finally rest after a long day of traveling. Here's the thing. As my flashlight shines on the inside of this hut, I am able to see some bullet cases. They appeared old, but they were enough to convince me that this spot had been used in the past. Now, this should have been the point I left, but I figured this spot hadn't seen any activity in years. After all, I hadn't seen anyone since my first day, and that was near the park in which I started this journey. So, I go ahead and clean up my little spot, and I get a campfire going. Fast forward to around 2 in the morning, and I have the urge to go number 1. I get up, I head over to some nearby trees, and I start doing my thing. This is where I truly believe getting up, taking my knife and flashlight with me, had saved my life. Seemingly out of nowhere, I started to hear tree branches breaking and leaves being disturbed. I'll admit, I got a bit nervous, so I hide behind some rocks to see what could be causing the disturbance. Out stepped 2 fairly large men, each armed with what appeared to be like shotguns. I froze, as my first thought was, were these 2 friendly? Well, I got my answer shortly thereafter. You see, I watch as one of them whispers into the other's ear. Then, they start approaching where my campsite was. What they did next sent chills down my spine. One of them takes the shotgun, points it at my sleeping bag, and fires. I wish I was joking, but to say I nearly passed out from fright proved just how out of touch I truly was. Here's what I think happened. I believe they thought somebody had been inside the sleeping bag. After all, I had it closed up all the way, and on top of that, I had a pillow and blanket covering where my face would be. That's why I think they thought somebody was in there. But why in the world would they do something like that? I have no clue, but I didn't want to run or make any sudden noise. If they were truly after more than just valuables, what's to say they wouldn't try coming after me if they saw me or they heard me? That's why I spent the next few moments in silence as they just laugh, grab my backpack, and eventually walk away, never to be seen or heard from again. This brings us to the conclusion. Once I could no longer hear them, I quickly run over to my camp, grab what little had been left, and begin walking. I had little supplies, and I truly believe had it not been for a park ranger that I encountered hours later, I would have forever been lost to the great outdoors. It's been well over 15 years, and I've since married, and I have 2 boys. I've taught them about the beauty of nature, but at the same time, I've warned them about its many dangers. Anyways, I hope you got a kick out of my scary experience I had. Stay safe, friends. Number 3. In between a bear and a hard place. I've had many real-life experiences growing up here in Alaska, the ones of the scary nature. There was once I was home alone as a kid, and some random intoxicated creep broke in with a pistol. I remember how he went on about how it was his house. He fired away at everything as I hid in my room for cops to arrive, but ultimately, he left and he got away. Though that was scary, I'm not here to talk about that. Instead, I wanted to submit this really frightening encounter I had in the Alaskan wilderness. This was a few years back in the summer, when I went hunting alone. I'd been about 2 days into my 3-day camping trip, and I remember I was sitting by the river cleaning up some fish and listening to the sounds of nature. It was around 10 p.m., and there was still sunlight out too. Out of the corner of my eye, I was able to see two small figures slowly stumble out from the trees. They were two baby bear cubs. Now, as adorable as it is to see Mother Nature present you with its creatures, any logical person knows this can ultimately spell your doom. Sure, they were cute, but where was the mom? If she was nearby, she would have no problem mauling me to pieces. Now, yes, I did have my hunting rifle, but it was all the way at my campsite. Not too far if I wanted to book it and grab it, but just enough of a distance where I would be in trouble. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you take it with you? I guess I'd grown so comfortable with the nature around me, I didn't think about something like this happening. A rookie mistake for sure. Nevertheless, I try to play it cool and slowly make the 30-second walk back to the tent. However, it seemed the bear cubs were more interested with me. They started approaching, frolicking like the curious creatures they were, getting within grabbing distance. As I continue to back away from them, something else happens that quite literally stops me in my place. I hear the sound of a bear roar, and when I turn around, I find my answer. One of the largest mother bears I'd ever seen in my life. She was beautiful and majestic, but I knew what this meant. Here I stood, miles in the woods, far away from any help. I was in between a mama bear and her cubs, with only a knife. The next choices I chose would determine whether or not I would make it out alive and ever see my own family. I had few options. I could run, I could stand still, or I could try to scare them to the best of my ability. Running wasn't going to happen. In case you had no clue, bears can easily outrun humans, and with the riverbank being covered with sharp rocks, I was going to be an easy catch, so to speak. I could try to scare them, but did I really want to agitate the bear? This left me with only one other option: stand still and hope for the best. Well, I lie. I did a bit of standing still and slowly backing up to the river, not keeping my eyes off of them, of course. Now, the baby bears continue to approach me, while the mom does the same. All I can remember saying was, "Go away. Come on, your mom's over there. Please, I don't taste good." After 30 seconds or so of this back and forth, the bear cubs hop over to their mom, and I breathe a sigh of relief. However, I'm still not out of the situation. While they were a good distance from me, I was still in no position to run. Not that I got the chance to do so, because now all 3 of them began walking up to me, and I freeze in place. Try as I did, I wasn't moving. My brain told me to run, but I was in such shock, it's like fear took over. While you might think this was the part they mauled me, they didn't. Instead, the 3 just walked past me, again within touching distance, then head into the river. That was it. At last, they were a safe distance for me to actually make a move, and I waste no time in doing so. I grab my things, and I leave the area, choosing to cut my trip short. It's funny because I'll laugh about it today when I tell the story to family and friends, but you can imagine how I felt knowing that quite literally, I was about to become their dinner. So if there is anything I have to say, I will say this. Thank you, bear, for not completely wrecking and destroying me. Number 4. Keep a secret. This isn't my story, but it is my dad's. He's letting me write it up so I can share it with the creepy fox. This happened to him when he was a teenager, back in the early 1980s. He had been playing in his backyard with a friend when they decided they would go into the woods to do some exploring. Now, where my dad lived, he was living in a rural part of Pennsylvania, where there was a small set of woods, which eventually took you into the mountains. A lot of hunters are usually out there, but this wasn't during hunting season. This was during a time when those woods were pretty empty. Something else to note is that his backyard becomes that set of woods, once you hop over his backyard fence, that is. Anyways, there was still sunlight, and both himself and his friend had been playing in a creek. That's when this man ran up to them. My dad recalls the man also having a pistol.
Hey, you two kids. If any cops come up to you and they're wondering if you saw me, tell them you saw nothing.
He then raises the pistol and points it at the two. Both of them freaked out. They swore they would remain silent. The man then runs off into the woods. Things then started to become loud a few minutes later, as they're able to hear a helicopter fly over them, followed by the sounds of dogs barking. Both of them now watch as police officers and canine units are running out from behind trees, coming up to them with a purpose. You kids shouldn't be out here. We're searching for a man. Have you seen him? Yeah, he went that way. He had a pistol too, and a blue sweater and torn up jeans. Yep, that's him. Go with these officers. They'll take you somewhere safe. They then went with some officers who drove them to their house. But this presented another scene. When they arrived back to my dad's house, they had no idea that the man they had been searching for had actually broken into his home and was now being surrounded by police on all sides. Thankfully, his parents hadn't been home. After an hour being held up in there, they were able to get him to surrender. It wasn't until a few days later they learned more about this creep. Apparently, he had just robbed a gas station and he had shot up the place, aiming at the cashier and the customers. Luckily, they all survived. But yes, that was the time my dad and his friend stumbled into a robber while out hanging out in the woods. Number 5. This is my RV. Walking through the woods has been something I've always loved doing. Admittedly, I still enjoy going out on trails with my cup of hot chocolate and walking my German Shepherd Alistair. Crazy when you consider the freak I stumbled into a few years ago. Let me take you back. It was during my freshman year of college. I was on a 5-hour break in between classes. I live quite a bit of a drive from home, and I wasn't really looking to waste too much gas. But there wasn't much I could really do, at least not on campus. This was when I got the brilliant idea of heading to this large set of woods on the outskirts of the city. It was close enough that I only had to drive for 10 minutes. Funny because once you were on the trail, it only took you about half a mile until you were pretty much in the middle of nowhere. I guess it didn't help that the trail I was on was rarely traveled. This was due in part to the incline it has that takes you to the top of this large hill that overlooks the entire city. That's where I was heading. So far, things were pretty normal. That is until the walk back. I needed about 45 minutes to get to my car, but as I'm heading down the same trail, I decided to take a different route. It still takes you to the parking lot, but it does have you take a detour around a large lake, which I had seen from the hillside. So as I'm walking, I see what looks like an abandoned RV hiding in between an opening in the trees. Actually, it caught my attention, and I actually wanted to go check it out. Oh, how stupid I was for letting my curiosity get to me. When I arrived, I got a better look, and the door was completely open, and the windows appeared to be boarded up. It should have been my sign to just leave, but I thought, what a cool story to tell my classmates when I get back to campus. So I approached the RV, and when I'm at the door, I'm questioning whether or not this was a good idea. Hello? Is someone in there? I'm coming in. Just a college student here. No harm. I walk in, and the place was a mess. Trash was thrown everywhere, dishes were piling on top of the sink, and there was this overall feeling of dread. This would be enhanced when out from the back of the room, a strange-looking man walks out with a revolver, and he points it right at me.
What are you doing in my RV?
He says, full of anger. Whoa, take it easy. I'm sorry. I thought this place was abandoned. Please, I'll just leave. No need to do anything crazy. I reply back, panicking like no tomorrow.
You can't tell me what to do. This is my RV, and you're in for it, kid.
I book it as I hear a round hit the door. I don't look back, and I get out of there not questioning his demands. Now, I did go to the police station, but by the time they searched the area later, he was already long gone. So I'm not sure who he was and what he was doing out there to begin with, but I definitely learned not to check abandoned RVs that are in the middle of the woods. Number 6. The Creature from the Wilderness. Before I get started with presenting you this story, I must say, I'm still very much left with more questions than answers. Not so much for how scared I became, but for the fact I don't exactly know what it is I saw. Now, I've read and I've heard many stories similar to mine, but perhaps with your help, I can finally put this to rest. So, my girlfriend and I had been camping in the southern Arizona wilderness for about a day and a half, and we were starting to settle down for night number 2. Seeing as it was late October, temperatures were a bit on the cool side, so we rushed to reignite our campfire and settle in for the evening. Everything was going smoothly, and we sat around talking while enjoying the food we had packed. I want to say 10 p.m., we had already gone inside our tent, and my girlfriend, who we will call Samantha, was fast asleep. I had the lantern on reading a book, and suddenly I got the urge to use the restroom. I hid outside next to a tree, and I started to do my business. This was when a series of strange events started to occur. It first started with this horrible smell. It was like a mix of garbage and iron. You can throw rotten eggs into that description too. I started thinking maybe there was a carcass left over, maybe by some sort of predator. But as I looked around, I couldn't find the source. I guess it's also important to note that the smell started gradually. It wasn't just like, bam, here's this terrible smell. No, it's like it was getting closer, slowly and maniacally. That was weird. But so was hearing Samantha's voice coming from deeper in the woods. Roger, over here. I kid you not. It's still something that sends me chills. Samantha's tone echoed like a voice bouncing in an abandoned building. I follow the noise. Meanwhile, I'm getting farther and farther away from the tent. Samantha, where are you, honey? I recall replying back with a sense of urgency. Then things went silent. It's like all the noise had been placed on mute. The crickets and owls that gave off their usual spiels had suddenly disappeared. I'll admit, I was frightened. Now that I was pretty much in the middle of nowhere, I started thinking maybe I was just imagining the voice. After all, the smell had gone, and I no longer heard Samantha's voice echoing. Thus, I make my return, and sure enough, Samantha was fast asleep inside the tent. Samantha, wake up, I say, as she slowly drifts out of her slumber. What is it, Roger? Did something happen? I now had to explain that I had heard her call me 5 minutes prior, into which she told me she had no clue what I was talking about. No, honey, I was knocked out. I might have been sleep talking, but you know I don't do that. She had a point. This is the part where I have to convince myself my overimagination was playing tricks on my mind. So I'm able to calm down, and finally I do fall asleep. I just wish that was it. But no. Fast forward to around 5:30 in the morning, and the sun is just an hour from rising. Roger, wake up. There's someone outside. I jump up and look at her as fear runs down her face. Are you sure? I don't hear... Tree branches started to shake, and the rotten smell from hours earlier started to fill up our tent. I grab our shotgun, and I take a peek outside. I don't see anything at first, but after my eyes adjust to the darkness, I'm able to see something tall and hairy walking around just behind some shrubbery. It was very tall, kind of like you would imagine a bear were standing on 2 feet, or if a person was in a costume. However, it's still too dark to tell what it is for sure, so I grabbed the flashlight, only to realize it wasn't working. Well, damn. Who's out there? I'm armed, and I'm not afraid to fire back. I don't hear any response. Tears now started to come down Samantha's eyes. Meanwhile, I was trying to act as calm as I could, but admittedly, I was scared too. I have Samantha wait in the tent, as I head outside to confront whoever or whatever this was. But here's the thing, this person or whatever animal it was just walks away until I can no longer smell or hear anything. But just when I think it's over, the loudest, ear-deafening scream we've both ever heard. It scared us so much, we threw everything into our backpacks and we run over to our truck that was parked just a quarter of a mile down the trail. That was it. Until a week or so later, I was talking to my friend's dad. He's Native American, by the way. After describing what we experienced, he mentioned something called the skinwalker. I still don't really know what that is, but I'm finding it incredibly hard to believe. But I don't know. Maybe there's some of you out there who are more knowledgeable with this. Help a brother out, will you? Anyways, that's what I had to say. Thanks for listening. Number 7. At first, there was one. Wait until you hear my scary story. Spoiler alert, this doesn't involve a person. There my girlfriend and I were, minding our own business, camping about a 30-second walk from our RV. We're about an hour outside of the city of Wasilla, Alaska, pretty much as remote as it gets. Since this was late September of 2013, temperatures were still fairly average for camping. Nothing too cold, about 50s during the day, and mid to high 30s in the evenings. So, it was late at night, around 9:30 p.m., and we had just climbed down from a tree, which we had been using to watch the sunset. Once we were on the ground, we sat next to the tent warming up some hot dogs and listening to some music. While I'm cooking our meal, my girlfriend points out that she saw movement in the tree line, just further up ahead. I take a look in the same direction, but we get our answer when a couple of rabbits jump out, then scurry along their merry way. A little scare, but we laugh it up. Fast forward about half an hour, and we're tending to the fire telling scary stories. Again, we heard movement, and we sort of laugh it off thinking the rabbits were back. However, rabbits don't growl, do they? I'm pretty sure they don't, because a wolf, yes, a wolf, comes walking out from behind some bushes, growling at us as if we were near its den. Both my girlfriend and I stare at this giant of a creature. Meanwhile, the wolf just stands there staring at both of us. What to do? I did bring a rifle, but when I tried reaching for it, I saw I'd left it next to the tent. Well, it wasn't within grabbing distance, so what do? Run for it? But would this cause the wolf to suddenly act? We had to try. I whispered to my girlfriend, "Get ready to run." Once we were in sync, the both of us book it. Meanwhile, the wolf just stands there staring, continuing to growl. In one quick motion, I grab the rifle as we continue heading to the RV. This is the point where I have to mention we realized that we were outnumbered. You see, I'm able to see a pack of at least 6 wolves running after us. I tell my girlfriend to keep running as I'm hoping we had the RV door unlocked. Thank goodness we did, because had it been closed, I don't think I would have had enough time to protect us from all 6 wolves. Anyways, one of the wolves was just a few inches from latching itself onto my sweater, but had dove into the RV just in time. We now hear them barking and growling as my girlfriend and I sat there, catching our breath, just in pure shock. Why did these wolves suddenly decide to attack? We think it had to do with the smell of food from our campfire. It's just a bummer, because we've been camping in this part of the Alaskan wilderness for years, and not once had we ever encountered a wild animal, let alone be chased by them. So, that's it. With us being so hungry and tired, we cut our camping trip short, and we drove back home to Wasilla, where we stopped at a diner to grab some food. Number 9. The Farm in the Wilderness. So this creepy experience happened about 3 years ago, when my friend Christy and I decided to explore some backwoods. Now, we had been here plenty of times, mainly due to how boring our small Oklahoman town is. But this afternoon turned out to be a bit different than others. You see, we wanted to go explore this farm that had been abandoned for the past couple of years. The owner ended up passing away, and his family sort of left the place to rot. Unfortunate, but it did create this urban exploration opportunity that my friend and I were dying to experience. Now, we had driven past it before, but not once did we ever consider going in, mainly due to the do not trespass signs that were posted everywhere. With that said, Christy meets up at my house. Then, we make the 30-minute bicycle ride over to the set of woods in which we would reach this little farm. As we started getting closer, we got this very strange feeling, a feeling of dread, like we were being watched. Christy agreed, but we wrote it down to us being excited to explore something brand new. Eventually, the trail opens up to this open field, where in the distance, we're able to see a home, and even a barn. At last, the location of the farm. We start to get closer, and this is where the first sign of something being wrong hits us. I just so happened to be looking in the direction of the barn's big doors, where I could have sworn I saw figures staring at Christy and I. However, I wrote it down as my over-imagination, and I decided not to say anything, as not to worry my friend. Anyways, we got off our bicycles and decided to try and find an opening for the home. The door was boarded up, and debris/trash was scattered everywhere. "Hey, over here! I found a way in," Christy said, full of excitement. I meet her at the back of the house, and sure enough, one of the windows had been smashed open, albeit with glass still broken everywhere. We take our knives and push the glass out of the way, then carefully, we make our way in. The inside was just how you would imagine an abandoned location being. There's a bunch of trash and graffiti written all over the walls. But perhaps what was most scary was when we entered the kitchen. There was a huge red circle with what looked to be like cult symbols. A bunch of knives were stuck on the wall, and there were messages that said things like, "Do not enter," and "You'll be next." Kind of strange. But again, we ignore these messages, and we continue searching. Really, the only exciting things we could find were some leftover photos and a skull. Yes, you heard that right. There was a skull inside an open box on the kitchen table. It sent chills down our spine, and we pretty much noped our way back out the way we came. However, our adventure wasn't over just yet. We still wanted to check out the barn, so we head over, and once we were inside, we ended up hearing what sounded like shuffling. My friend and I started to back up in suspense, when out from behind some old tractors, what appeared to be like homeless people walk out with pistols. These guys were fairly scrawny with long hair and dirty clothing, but they were intimidating enough for my friend and I to leave.
"This is our barn. Leave if you know what's good for you."
The fact the two let us get away with just a warning was something we were thankful for. We waste no time grabbing our bicycles, and we start to leave. But the two strangers still left us with one more message. As we're nearing the woods, we hear the shot of the pistols echo, and a bullet actually hits one of the do not trespass signs just a few mere feet from me. Perhaps they changed their mind, but we didn't want to find out. That was the last time we went there, and last I heard, the farm was set ablaze, and now all that remains is an open field.